So this is the week that I finally acknowledge that I need to put more content behind my paywall. This is something I've struggled with going all the way back to when I launched my paid newsletter in 2020. I've always hated putting content behind the paywall. Part of it has always just been kind of a ego/journalistic thing of wanting as many people as possible to consume my content. And to be fair, when I started my paid newsletter, I only had like 1,000 free subscribers. So if I had been locking a ton of content behind the paywall from the very beginning, it would have seriously stunted my growth. And yeah, maybe I could have converted more paid subscribers over time, but it would have just been so hard to build my audience. And to have a successful subscription strategy, you do need a lot of top of funnel readers and listeners and viewers so that you can slowly convert them into paid subscribers. It's only when they develop a relationship with your content that they determine that they should pay. Over the years, it just became so clear to me that the reason people weren't converting was just because they didn't have to. I always had this kind of romantic idea, and I think a lot of journalists and creators have this, is that if people understand the value of the content that you're creating, if they understand the value they're bringing to you, then they'll voluntarily pay for your content because they want it to continue existing. And there are some cases where that's true. Like, I think obviously outlets like The Guardian and public radio and public television have sort of fulfilled that reality, or they've gotten their audience to pay them on a one-time donation or even signing up for memberships without locking any of their content behind a paywall. But the vast majority of media outlets just can't succeed by doing that. It's just not feasible because there's just so many creators and outlets out there with their hands out wanting their audiences to give them money. And it's just too competitive. And so, yeah, like some percentage of my audience has converted in order to support my work, but that's a very small minority. Most of the people, even some of my biggest fans, or people who would call themselves huge fans of mine, are just not going to pay for content unless they absolutely have to. And so over the years, I've just played around with trying to figure out what I can put behind the paywall while keeping as much as possible in front of the paywall. And so even when I was putting stuff behind a paywall, it was like a small percentage of the content that I was actually creating. And my business suffered as a result. Like, I just could not convert people at a high enough rate to build kind of like a sustainable living through my content. Now, if I had multiple revenue streams, maybe that wouldn't have mattered as much, because if I was monetizing my content with like advertising or affiliate links and stuff like that, then it would have made sense for me to keep more of my content for free, because obviously advertisers want to reach, a much larger audience. So keeping my content free and growing that audience more quickly would have benefited for me. But I really kind of determined several years ago that I was not going to prioritize building a sponsorship-based business, at least early on. And so it was really quite stupid that because even though I determined that I needed to go all in on subscriptions, that I continued to keep too much of my content free. So flash forward to today, I feel like I've gotten now a good mix of both free and paid content to where there is no newsletter that goes out that doesn't have some kind of paywalled component to it. So I think there are probably 3 pillars of my paid content strategy. The first is the newsletter sponsorship index, which is the kind of data tool that I built where I am logging the sponsors across hundreds of different newsletters, both B2B and B2C newsletters, and I'm putting that into a spreadsheet and I'm locking that behind a paywall. And that's not like traditional content, that's more of an information product. The second component is my archive of case study interviews. Like, one thing I do is I do these interviews with really successful media entrepreneurs about how they built their businesses. And I will then take those interviews and create a case study article between 1,500 and 2,000 words that's evergreen in nature. And I currently have 99 of those in my archive And to access that archive or to read the entire articles, you have to become a paid subscriber. And then the final component that I finally decided this week that I need to start putting behind the paywall are the newsletters that I'm sending out twice a week. The newsletters where I'm curating news, offering analysis and commentary. Prior to today, those were 100% free. Now, what I'm doing is Substack allows you to send out a newsletter to your entire free list in addition to your paid list, where you can lock part of it behind the paywall. So basically what I'm doing is half of that newsletter that goes out every Tuesday and Thursday is above the paywall, so my free audience can read that. So they still get value every time they open my newsletter. But then I'm also teasing the second half of the newsletter and showing them what's behind the paywall. And so now I feel like it's a good mix to have the information tool, the evergreen archive of case studies, and then the more kind of topical news and curation. And obviously the data set's pretty small, but I have started to see just in the last few weeks an uptick in paid subscription conversions as a result of this. So I'm hopeful that by placing more content behind the paywall that I can start converting my subscribers at a higher rate. And then I'm hoping that will allow me to hit my subscription goals by the end of this year. Right now, I really want to convert at least 30 new paid subscribers per month. In January, I converted about 15 new paid subscribers, which was kind of disappointing. But so far in February, I've started converting at least one a day. If I keep on doing that for the next 12 months, I will be able to hit my subscription goals. Another big goal of mine, which I talked about in a previous video, is that I want to sell more sponsorships, mostly in the newsletter this year. I've engaged with a couple of salespeople. I've talked to a few of them. There's one or two that I'm working with on a consistent basis, and they're doing outbound sales, and they are making some progress and having some conversations with some potential sponsors for the newsletter. But what's also exciting is this week I closed 5 separate newsletter sponsorships and just did that myself, and it was all completely inbound. So people reaching out to me asking if they could buy sponsorships in the newsletter. So that's pretty exciting. Like, I always kind of treat sponsorship sales as a fluke. I never rely on it simply because I'm just not aggressive about going after it. But it's nice when they do just kind of fall into my inbox, and hopefully as I become a little more well known within my niche, more and more companies will reach out to me wanting to sponsor me. So yeah, that's a super cool way to end the week. So I was doing really well this winter in terms of exercise and making sure to get out several times a week and go running. Like with the weightlifting, I've always been good during the winter. Like that's easy to do. But in previous winters, I've always been horrible with cardio because I get in good running shape. We get to like November, December, we start having consistently below 50-degree days, and I just wimp out. And then I revert to just doing indoor cardio things like using the Peloton, using the elliptical. I absolutely hate running on a treadmill, so I usually avoid the treadmill. But the thing is, I just never get a good workout or a great workout when I'm doing indoor cardio, just simply because I can't motivate myself to really get my heart rate. My average heart rate on like the elliptical, for instance, is like 120. Whereas when I'm running, it's getting up to 150, 160, sometimes even 170. So it's just a completely different form of exercise. And as I talked about in a previous video, I stocked up all my winter running gear. I got gloves, I got earmuffs, I even got neck gaiters. I had tights, and I was consistently getting out there, even on a few like sub 40 days, like 33, like as low as like 33 degrees. I was still running it. I wasn't loving every minute of it, but I was. I was doing it, and I was content to keep doing that for the rest of the winter. But we know what happened next is not this past Sunday, but the previous Sunday, the entire eastern seaboard got hit with like a foot of snow, which then immediately turned to ice. And stayed below freezing that entire time. So for the past 2 weeks straight, not only has it been below 30 degrees on most days, but even if I wanted to go out and brave that cold, like so many of the sidewalks still in DC are just sheets of ice. Like there are so many people who didn't even bother to shovel their sidewalks, or if they did shovel them, they just shoveled like a tiny little slit that you can't really run on. Passing someone on a sidewalk is now like a Herculean task. It's kind of depressing. Like even going out on a walk, like I love to walk a lot, and even that is such a huge pain. And it's incredible that we're now 2 weeks into this, and it's still it's been 2 weeks since it snowed, and it's still hard to just even so much as walk around DC. But as a result of that, I've had to revert back to doing indoor cardio, which is not that great. But then on top of that, I've just had other things come up where I haven't been able to exercise as much. Like we decided to get out of town and go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to hit warmer weather. And whenever I'm traveling, I don't really get a chance to run as much. Like we do walk a ton. Like I'll get like 15,000 steps in a day whenever we're traveling, but I just don't, I can't, it's harder to find the time to run because we're actually like out doing stuff. So, and the Fort Lauderdale trip, we made the best of it, but it just so happened that it was the coldest weekend in Fort Lauderdale in the last year. It was getting down or only up to like 50s during the day. It was super windy. And then, it was getting down into the 30s at night, and our hotel didn't even have heating because obviously it's Fort Lauderdale. So we were just freezing at night. So not only did I miss out on good exercise, but I didn't even get some good sunshine out of it. So we made the best of it. We went to a few cool bars. We went to a really good Greek restaurant. We also went to one restaurant where I had the worst lobster pasta dish I've ever had in my life. But it was a decent time, but it really was kind of you spend a decent amount of money on flights and hotel and everything like that, and we didn't even fully get to escape the cold, which kind of sucked. And now, I also had a doctor's appointment all the way in Baltimore this week. Last week I had to get blood work for that Baltimore doctor's appointment. So let's just say I'm very frustrated by the combination of the winter and the decrease in exercise that I've been experiencing now for 2 weeks straight. And looking at the weather forecast, looks like finally next Tuesday it's going to start getting into the 40s, at least for a few days. Hopefully that'll melt the snow, and then at the very least, even if it gets down cold again, at least like you can actually run on the sidewalk, so I should be able to start running again. And then I am just counting the days until March when the clocks change, when it gets warmer. I am really ready to get outside on a more consistent basis and run a lot more miles than I am currently. So just counting down the days. This week I finally made the decision to move forward with getting on some kind of GLP-1 drug. I talked about this in a previous video a little bit, but I've just, because of a combination of factors, but what they all add up to is a very slow metabolism. I have been steadily gaining weight for years now, and no matter what I do from an exercise perspective, no matter what I do from a dieting perspective, I just cannot seem to stem the weight gain or lose weight. And as a result, not only am I overweight, but it's also really affected my running in the sense that I'm just carrying so much weight when I run. So that's just slowing me down considerably. Like I could have run a much faster half marathon in Philadelphia in November if I had been like 30 or 40 pounds lower. So I've been thinking about getting on a GLP-1 drug for at least a year now. What I've been waiting for, because I wasn't really thinking that my insurance would cover it, is I knew the Wegovy was planning to roll out a pill version of it that was going to be not super expensive, and the FDA, and so I was just waiting for the FDA to finally approve that and for that to come on the market, which it did in January. So it looks like it's only going to cost about $150 a month to get the Wegovy pill, the name brand version. Because I always knew that there were the compound pharmacies, but all the reading I did was that they were operating in this legal gray area, and I didn't want to get on these drugs if suddenly I got an alert that the provider couldn't provide the drugs anymore because they had just been sued. So this week I logged on to one of these online telehealth pharmacies. I filled out all the information. Supposedly they have doctors or nurse practitioners or something that can actually prescribe me the medication, and then once that's gone through, I can start receiving them in the mail. So I'm just going to do a low dose pill. I really just want to lose somewhere between 30 and 40 pounds, but I'm excited to finally, hopefully, get on these drugs. Because it's just been so frustrating to put so much work in to try to eat so healthy every week, to do so much exercise. Like I literally was training for a half marathon and running, 30 plus miles a week, plus getting tons of walking in and cross training and stuff like that. And my weight wasn't budging at all. So my hope is that this drug will eliminate the food noise, will allow me to cut calories even further and hopefully get into a calorie deficit. And then I'm supposed to run the Philly Half Marathon again in November, and I'm hoping by then my weight will be down significantly and I will be able to run faster as a result.